And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today I am joined by a repeat guest, Jose. Welcome back to the show.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
And I think it's probably worth saying for the few people who are living under rocks that you are not here on the show just on a whim. You are here on the show as part of your celebratory tour as our new versus world champion. So congratulations are in order immediately.
Thanks so much. It's an honor.
Well, I mean, it's a difficult hill to climb. There were some killers hanging out at Gen Con this year. And we will get to your Gen Con rounds, but before we dive into that, I want to talk about kind of the trajectory that brought you to what you were playing at this event. So, for anybody who maybe wasn't following what the Gen Con event was, what was the format? And as part of with that format, what were some MCs that stuck out to you early in your testing?
Oh man, that's a fun question. It was incursion, so the format where after every tournament they ban a few cards, and MCs that stuck out. It there wasn't any that initially stuck out, right? You just had your wide gambit of different MCs that everyone just knew about, like the usuals, like Invisible Woman, um, Adam Warlock, that kind of stuff. Those are the typical ones that stuck out. But I was looking into the MCs, just all the MCs, and honestly, I was going through it with my brother, and we just looked at Mystique and we're like, maybe, and we just kind of ran with her.
So pretty early on, it seems like you settled onto the main character that you ultimately took to the event. During testing, were there so given that incursion is a format where you have an incomplete card pool, there's cards that have been destroyed out of what you're allowed to play. As you were testing this main character, were there times where you thought, "Oh, this card would be perfect, but I'm not allowed to play it"? What did it feel like building for incursion and kind of in a broader sense? Do you think we're reaching the point where incursion has become a fundamentally different format than multiverse?
I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew what the full multiverse format is. I think that's very just similar to Incursion, but they have their own ban list. But yeah, I mean, I think this tournament kind of showed it. There were so many different decks out there, and it's exactly what I was expecting. In the sense that like it wasn't going to be like one deck that everyone brought. It was just so many different decks out there, and to that point, like I think it was impossible to prepare against everything. Right, like part of the tournament, of course, is skill, but part of it is also luck on the matchups that you get paired against.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And given the diversity of the field, it seems like some of the complaints that versus players had had in previous years about our competitive scene is that it's a little bit too obvious what the best stuff is. And a lot of our formats are like 60% of the decks are one main character, and then there's out of the remaining 40%, half of that is another main character with a few. It seems like this year the incursion format was a lot more diverse than events we've seen in years past. And given that, that kind of presents unique challenges, what was your approach to building Mystique? Were you trying to think about the other decks in the room, or just narrow in on making Mystique the best you could make her?
Definitely the best I can make her. Number one, I didn't think that a lot of people would play her in general, but that was I like the uniqueness in it because, like for example, the previous year I think I played Doom, and last year's Gen Con in the top eight, I think it was five Miss Marvels, two First Evil, and then I was the sole Doom. And
Hmm.
then this year in the top 16, I think I was the sole Mystique. I think I was the sole Mystique in the whole tournament. Um, so yeah, no, it definitely looked at her, and I think one of the and as I said, like my brother and I kind of like we were the ones kind of like putting the deck together, um, and we were thinking of like what would make it good or not good, and then until we discovered the dramatic entrance into Marvel Girl scenario, which was huge, and that right there was I think like when we figured that one out, we're like, okay, we're gonna run with this, and we're gonna see how far we can get with it.
For somebody who's not familiar with that interaction, what is dramatic entrance? Who is Marvel Girl? Can you break down why that's so good?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest issues for Mystique has always been the leveling up. She needs to get 10 attack, so she can level up to a level 2, and then she gets 9 attack, so she can level up to a level 3. People have always used the combinations, and honestly, everyone I talked to in the tournament mentioned they had their own mystiques, and they all do it the same way. Shock to the system, cat fight, a 2-drop. I can't remember what his name is, but he has 7 attack, non-lethal guy. Excuse me. And so that's the normal route. But the dramatic entrance into Marvel Girl just opened up a brand new avenue in the sense that if you dramatic entrance, which removes Mystique from the attack or anyone on your side from the attack, and brings in Marvel Girl immediately gives Mystique, or honestly anyone on your side, but you always pick Mystique, plus 10 attack for the turn. So that automatically levels her up. So
That's
it
pretty
went from
strong.
like, yeah, it went from like a pain having to gather 3-4 cards to level her up 1 level to hey, you attack me, you're most likely gonna double stun with Marvel Girl because Marvel Girl is a 10/10 with flight and range, right? And you're gonna double stun with Marvel Girl. Your main's gonna take a wound, and Mystique's gonna level up. So I thought that was really really strong.
Did that combo end up performing the way you expected it to once you actually got into the event?
Oh, for sure. Because a good chunk of my deck was obviously leveling up and getting to the Deadpool alt win, but also another part of the deck was a lot of hate in it, right? And for example, like Timbuba. But if you want to get Timbuba off the board, you gotta stun him. If you have to stun him, you are in a big risk of me dramaticing into Marvel Girl. Um, so that I think that just put people in a very hard situation a lot of the times. They're like, do I attack? Do I not?
Hmm.
Um, on one sense, they have to try to get rid of the hate cards. On the other hand, they could end up doing that, double stunning, leveling me up, and making it easier for me for potentially an alt win.
So speaking of alt wins, why don't you walk us through your transformation pile and the cards that were there and like what the thinking was in including those specific ones?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is the most obvious is Deadpool, right? The alt win. Um, and that's if I can get my opponent's board face down, I can just attack directly. Um, with Deadpool for the win. And then so actually that comes to the second thing that actually made me really want to play Mystique was the X-Men now have the new card this and that. Um, that card pretty much says give your character a +1 counter, give your opponent a -1 counter. So a lot of times when you attack directly with Deadpool for the win, your opponent, they can always react with like last one, shock to the system, stuff like that. But if I attack directly with Deadpool and then use this and that, they automatically die. They cannot react to that.
That's disgusting.
So yeah, that helped with the alt win, and then as I said, the Marvel Girl, excuse me, into leveling up, and then because of the double stun, she could trade with anyone again, helping clearing their board, so I can win with Mystique. Like I think a few times this tournament, I went from a level 1. I would be like on turn 3, I'd be a level 1, and then on the start of turn 4, I'd be already a level 3 and would be able to attack for the win. Like that's how deadly it can be. But yeah, that was the Deadpool. The next one was Cosmo. Um, for all for a lot of the alt win decks, like I expected Pixie Max, for example. If I can become I'm sorry, if I could become Cosmo, you become Maximus, or I'm sorry, you call Maximus's power, and then they will never be able to use it. Um, they can't win that way, and then you just have Cosmo, who's a 3/10, and they'll never stun him either. And then you just slowly build up your board, and then you should be able to like outmuscle the Pixie Max deck. So, and then, excuse me, what it would take me a little while to become Cosmo, I would also stall out with X-23, the supporting character. No superpowers, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And then third one was mainly it was an aggro was Joseph. I'm a fan of Joseph. I know a lot of people are not. And I played him in Duality and had some pretty good success overall with him. but he would be the muscle if I had extra reds, for example, and my opponent's board started getting too beefy, and he does really good against Photo because they don't have too many outs to a really beefy Joseph. So it just really depended the avenue where my matchup. Like I could get aggressive, if I really needed to. I could stop alt wins, and at the same time, I could alt win myself.
Yeah, that's a pretty clean selection of choices that sort of, no matter what your opponent's trying to do, you've got a good answer for it. Uh,
Right.
did you feel like there were any main characters that you might have considered that you wish you had the day of the event, or are you happy with the transformations that you chose?
Overall, I'm happy the transformations that I've chose. I'm sure there's probably other good ones out there. I just didn't figure it out in time. But yeah, no, I'm fairly happy with the ones I got.
I guess while we're talking about out of game piles, let's take a look at Ahab for a minute. In your Hound pile, I see Iceman, Wolverine, Cypher, and Deadpool. Do you want to talk about those choices a little bit and what role those hounds served?
Yeah, yeah. Let me take a look. Iceman, Cypher. I don't even remember. Iceman, Wolverine, and Deadpool. Okay. Um. So Iceman, of course, if you're going against aggression, Iceman freezes them. You can even dramatic entrance into an Iceman, right? So even if I don't have the Marvel Girl, I dramatic into Iceman, and let's say that they started their attack with a supporting character and their main character is ready. So I dramatic into Iceman, freeze their main character. Their main character, so their supporting will well, won't double stun, but it'll kill off Iceman. No one cares about that. Iceman will freeze their main, who won't be able to attack that turn, and then because Iceman says they can't ready the next turn, they can't attack the next turn. So it's kind of almost like a double freeze in one. But
Hmm.
that was one fun way to use him. But he's just he's for the really aggressive decks that had a slowdown. Cypher in testing for whatever reason, I ran into a lot of times where I would just draw an immense amount of yellow locations, and not anything else. Um, and that's why he was there. He was kind of like the emergency, like, oh crap, I don't have what I need, but I have all these extra yellows. Well, then dump my hand and reload with Cipher.
Hmm.
Um, Wolverine was good. I put him in as a mix of aggression and for the MCAs.
Which
Um,
version of Wolverine is this?
the new 3-drop one.
Okay, okay.
The new 3-drop with 3 health. So that was good because if I play Hound on 2, I could drop Wolverine on 3, and unless they lethal him, then Wolverine's alive for 3 turns, which means I have at the very least 3 turns I can MCA them if I needed to. Um, so
So
it's
he
just
was
trying to keep
mostly
him on
there
the
for
board.
his, yeah, it was his health value that was mainly what he was serving for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, he was also really good in the sense that he's a 3/3 berserker, so essentially 4/4, and then he has fearless, so he can run into mains. There are some situations where the deck can go aggro, and so he just becomes an attacker that strikes for at the very least 8 attack on a main character, helps me get some wounds in. So he actually, again, he does dual roles. Like I love in any one of my decks that I play, I love cards that play dual roles. Deadpool, another great card. So I'm just trying to get rid of their board. It comes in, strikes someone, can potentially attack, recover, and then he strikes, someone else. So like he could easily take out 2, 3 people. My thought initially with him was if my opponent tries to, um, like if they're like, oh crap, he's going to try to kill me by attacking me directly, and they try to put a whole bunch of weenies on the board. Well, then he comes out and he takes out all the weenies, making it a little bit easier for me.
Sure. That it feels like you've
Hmm.
got all of your there's a lot of flexibility here. You've got all your avenues covered to get you where you need to be. Looking at your character curve, you mentioned Tim Booba already, and we kind of talked about Ahab. Uh, there's a couple different, it looks like two different Unis versions in there. I assume
Yeah.
that's the older one and the new one. Um, Banshee, Lilith, and I cannot read what this last card is under Marvel Girl.
Boomerang,
Uh,
probably.
Boomerang. Yeah. So out of
There you go.
your character curve, was there anybody that didn't pull their weight? Were there any cards that you kind of thought at the on the day like, man, I wish this was something else, or are you happy with this list overall?
No, I'm actually honestly extremely happy with the list. Like as I said, I worked on that deck for the last month. My brother and I kept coming up with ideas, and then my teammates Ash and Patrick, they were also really, they were awesome in giving me their own tips, as well as they were playtest with me as well. And those are two really good quality players, so playtesting against them always gave me good valuable feedback. But no, at the end of the day, I'm actually overall incredibly happy with the list. It's really weird because I think I played 13 four drops, which is a insanely amount of four drops, but they all had their role and it all just worked as good as it could. As of right now, I cannot imagine anything in that deck that I would change.
It's a good feeling. It's not very often that you walk away from a tournament and go, every single choice in this list is exactly what I needed. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
and like I mentioned, like since we had been working on that for a month, like there was different versions. Like when we first just started to try Mystique, and I mentioned this to Roland. Like I remember during Quarantine Cup 3, we played against Roland's Mystique deck. So we pull that out kind of as a base and be like, let's see what's in here. Let's see what we can use. And of course, it had the usual stuff to try to level her. And then we just slowly evolved that. We even had a spell version, which was great, but obviously a spell version falls prey to anyone who has discard cards, like a mold or stuff like that. And then at that moment,
mhm.
you're just screwed. Um, like I probably have like 6 or 7 different versions of the deck, but this is just the one that I ended up with.
So I guess let's, unless you have any other comments about the deck itself, let's move into talking about the actual tournament. Um,
Let's do a tournament.
so this was a little bit different format than we have seen at any versus event previously. For somebody who didn't pay attention to how Gen Con went down, can you give us a synopsis of how the event was structured?
Yeah, for sure. Normally it's one day. I think it's normally on a Friday, and then it goes to top eight, and then the top eight plays on Sundays. Super simplistic. Your usual, right? This one was a little different. On Thursday was day one. You'd get a top eight on Thursday. If you didn't make it on Thursday, you could play on Friday, and then Friday would have its own top eight. And then on Sunday, you'd have the top 16. You'd have the eight from day one fight it out, and you have the eight from day two fight it out. And then the winner of each one of those brackets would have to fight each other for the title.
Given this is the first time that this type of format has been used, do you have any feelings about it? Did it go well? Are there things you hope they do differently next time? Like just not getting into the specifics of the games, but just the tournament structure. Did you have any feedback or feelings on that?
Nothing massively. The only thing is, since we all arrived on Thursday, and I know a lot of people, for example, arrived Thursday morning, it's tough, right? Because Wednesday into Thursday, I honestly only got 1 hour of sleep. So and then Thursday we got on the plane. Um, it was me, my friend Diego, and his brother David. We got on a plane. We headed over. We had to go get our car rental, go directly over there to Gen Con, and then immediately go and sign up. So we're like on little sleep. We're really tired, and we immediately have to essentially rush to get started. That's like my only minor gripe about the whole thing. There was no rest, so like I was definitely physically and mentally exhausted for that Thursday.
Did that travel play a role? I mean, I noticed you qualified on day two. Do you feel like that fatigue and that travel maybe played a role in the performance on day one?
Definitely, I don't. It definitely, I definitely felt it throughout the day, and I stayed with David and Diego, and like we were all three super exhausted that day one. So we were able to get sleep early that day, but by early, I mean we just literally passed out involuntarily that night. But yeah, that definitely played a role that first day for sure.
So to talk about your actual rounds, if you want, we can go round by round for the tournament, or if you just want to kind of summarize some cool key moments from specific games, I'm open to approaching it either way. Uh, but
Yeah.
but let's move into these rounds. What did day two at Gen Con look like for you?
Okay, so we want to skip day one, go to day two. I'm down for it. All right, let's see.
I mean, unless you want to relive day one, I assume you would prefer just to skip to day two.
My record wasn't bad on day one. I think I went 4-3.
Oh yeah, that's still respectable.
And no, yeah, for sure. I mean, because there were still day one 4-3s that made it in the top eight, right? So it wasn't a bad record. There was a, yeah, I don't have any gripes with that day in general. Those matches essentially just went the way they went. But yeah, sure. Let's do day two. So starting off day two, I decided to redo Mystique. And first things first was I remember I played Sean. Um, I thought because we had a conversation, he mentioned he might be playing Mystique, so I was like, all right, he's playing Mystique. This is going to be interesting. A Mystique Ditto, but he ended up going Ghost Spider. That's a fun thing because that was I think the big surprise for me on day one. There was a lot of people with Ghost Spider, which I was not expecting, and yeah, I just didn't see that one coming. And I learned about it day one. So I thought about that obviously between day one and day two. And my answer, which I already had in the deck, was Tim Booba. He comes out, they can't pull out Prowler, and it just kind of goes downhill for them from there. Um, yeah, so pull them out. He had trouble recovering from that. At one moment, he tried to pull the 4-drop Prowler. I remember that much, but he forgot that I X23 the previous turn. So he pulled out the 4-drop Prowler, discarded Maximus, and then tried to pay for the Maximus power, and that was a big nope. I was like, all
Yeah.
right, well, he's in. You discarded. Um, yeah, and that's honestly one of the pluses of playing a deck that people are not used to. Right? People are used to a lot of the decks, like Invisible Woman, as I said, Warlock, your OG Dark Phoenix builds, Captain Marvel. Like they're used to this stuff, but people are not really used to um, Mystique, or especially not this version of Mystique. So I totally understand where he just completely forgot, and it's happened to me in testing 1,000 times. But I had even used X23, and so that was unfortunate.
Yeah, that's rough.
And yeah, and the good thing is that's another spot where the 3-drop Wolverine shines. He comes in, he could slap um, Ghost Spider level 1 because she's just a 2/5, and he doesn't even get stunned back. And as I said, he's going to survive at the very least for 3 turns. So yeah, that's pretty much how that one went. I do believe near the end I got the combo. I don't 100% remember if that one I won it by wounds or because I got the combo off on him.
I mean, it feels
Let's see.
like if you turn off superpowers and your opponent fishes for the Maximus and commits to it, that's GG right there. That feels like that would be
All right.
really hard to recover from.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, because you're only so many prowlers in the deck. You're only so many Maximuses, and if you can't even play the 1-drop ones, yeah, it just becomes a giant uphill battle for them.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Round two was Bert. So I feel like Bert and I are just at this moment destined to play each other in tournaments. We had to play each other last year, round two as well. Last year was Doctor Doom first Evil. This year he was Warlock versus Mystique. And for me, that's one of my better matchups. Um, just because Warlock goes down and he stays down, so that's one less person for me to worry about having to go through for the alt win.
Hmm.
Normally Warlocks don't have anything that could stop me attacking them directly, so I don't even need a this and that to attack them directly to secure it. And then on top of that, Warlock also they play the Mantis, which they normally run Mantis into somebody, but Mystique is great in the sense that Mystique is only a 1/6 and then a 1/10. So Mantis just sits there, can't run into me. So essentially that's how that game went. I Mystique set up camp, everyone behind her. Um, and I think at one moment he did an attack. I think on turn 3, I want to say I dropped a Eunice with a Eunice power up. Mystique attacked for a level up. Then on turn 5 or 6, he dropped the Collector. Tried to run the Collector into Mystique, which is dramatic. So I dramatic into Marvel Girl, so she automatically leveled up. Obviously, the Collector was down. Adam Warlock was down. And then I was already level 3. So the next turn, I'm just like, all right, become Deadpool, attack you directly. And I think that was about it.
Brutal.
Yeah. That is definitely one of the matches that's definitely favorable for Mystique. Next one was Corey. Shout outs to Corey. Great guy. I believe he's a new player. He went in there. I think he only owned 2 sets. He mentioned to make Venom deck, and he had been doing really good. And how'd that go? So Venom, he made him really big and beefy. And I want to say it was on turn 3. He only had Venom and Lasher, attacked Mystique. Mystique paid the red to level 2. She went from a level 1 to a level 2. And then Dramatic into Marvel Girl, she went to a level 3. And then the next turn, so I went from a 1 to a 3. And then the next turn, I think I dropped either Banshee or Boomerang, just dazed Venom. And then I had a Eunice in the back row who attacked Lasher. And then again, just attacked for game. Right. That was literally the fun of the deck. Like I told you, it's turn 3, I was level 1. And then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, turn 3, I was a level 1. Then the next thing you know, turn 4, I was already Deadpool and just swinging for game.
Man, it seems like everything was hitting on all cylinders for you across these games. Like, did these feel tense, or were you drawing into the things and like, hey, this is how I expected it to work? I realize as you describe the games after the fact, it doesn't hit all the nuance of every moment, but it seems like you just are getting everything you need and it's smooth sailing. Is that how it felt at the table?
No. In fact, actually, that game I didn't. My hand was kind of weird in the early, and then I think I drew one turn. I drew the Marvel Girl, and then that last turn 3, I drew in the Dramatic.
Oh wow, so it was a top deck.
So
Okay.
for sure, there was definitely some top decks. There was a lot of top decks going on in that tournament. But that's why I always say when I make a deck, I like each card to have like dual value, so it's a lot harder for cards in my hand to become worthless.
hmm
And so that's went on for that one. What else? So that was Corey. Shout outs to him. I hope he continues the game. He was a really good guy, and he definitely looked like he was playing with more than just 2 day skills. Like the man was solid.
It's awesome to see
Um,
new players jump into tournaments like that. Mad respect for that. I love that approach.
yeah, for sure. So let's see. Next one was Osh. I had to play Osh. Um, that we both got deck checked on, and that's the only game the entire tournament I went to time. And I think part of that was honestly because of the deck check.
hmm
They did the deck check. They gave us 8 minutes back, but I feel like they technically should have given us a little bit more time because I think the deck check took a little longer than 8 minutes. But on top of that, when we get the decks back, they're completely unshuffled. So we have to spend a good chunk of time ensuring those decks are completely shuffled.
Yeah, because they
So
collate them like grouping all the cards. So for someone who hasn't seen a deck check before, they go through and they put all your Tim Boobas together, all your Aabs together. Like the deck is
exactly,
not randomized at all after a deck check.
for sure. And of course, we both passed our deck checks. No issue there. And the game just went, and it was just, as I said, the only one that went to time. It was unfortunate, and Osh had a great deck. And so it was just, it becomes a game of checkers, or chess, I'm sorry, that I like to say. And then just unfortunate because I think we were a little less time than we had. It went to time, and I think he had 4 wounds to my 0. But realistically, the wounds wouldn't matter for a deck like his because it was combo. But that's just kind of how that one went down. It was a victim of time,
That's unfortunate. It never feels good to win or lose to the clock.
for sure. After that, I played Marcellus, and I saw this on day 1 too. It was the Magneto loyalty decks, which props to him and a few other guys from the Team Apex for doing so good with the loyalty decks. I'm not 100% sold on the decks. I think the decks are really good. Um, but yeah, like you have to draw the stand together, right? Like if you're going against combo decks, I think you have to with those decks draw the stand together. And if you don't draw stand together, you're just in a very tough spot.
Hmm.
Um, but those guys, I mean, those guys clearly proved me wrong, right? I think Marcellus went 7-0 that day, and I think Vern, for example, the previous day went 6-1. So like that's about as good as a record anyone could get. Um, that game, I want to say it was close, but that game was not close. Of course, with all the characters and with Magneto's power, he just straight up hit his curve and just slapped me, and my hand was honestly subpar. I think he also had like two or three shock to the systems, um, like two or three unwavering loyalties, and then I think he mentioned he had to stand together, but he didn't have to use it against me like that. That just match went downhill fast, and yeah, I got nothing on that one. I just straight up lost. So props to them for the loyalty deck and getting far with those loyalty decks. After that, I played Ashley, um, which was Cloak and Dagger, which is definitely a few main characters I love. Like they are a little bit. If you do good with them early, they will help you snowball the game. If you do bad with them early, then you're in trouble, and they can actually go downhill pretty fast too.
Hmm.
So I think she drew well overall. If I want to say Jay Jonah came out on turn one. Scarlet Witch came out on two, and I forget what else. And I'm not gonna. I just got slapped every turn. My hand also wasn't the greatest, but I will say against the loyalty aggression deck and the aggression cloak and dagger, I think those were really bad matchups for me. I did have potential to beat those matchups. Like I had come up with plans on how to beat those, but I have to get lucky. I might draw a little bit on those, a lot of bit on
Hmm.
those, and it just did not happen. So that moment that brought me down to 4-2 for the day, with the final match being against Aaron, who was playing Liu Kang. Um, Same thing, Liu Kang. He's not the worst for my deck to worry about. Like I think I have a solid matchup against Liu Kang decks and a lot of the photo decks. So I think at one moment he used Killmonger on my level 2 Mystique, which wasn't the worst for me because I had the Marvel Go Dramatic in my hand, so I was okay with it. And so the way Killmonger works is he'll take whatever opponent's main powers, but if they level up, he doesn't get their new powers.
Hmm.
So I think he tried to attack, for example, with Liu Kang. Um, yeah, I think Liu Kang tried to attack into one of my guys, and I dramatic into Marvel Girl, which automatically leveled me up to a level 3. And even though Killmonger had my power, he had the red power, which the more attack power. He did not take the transformation power, so automatically leveled up. Liu Kang stunned during my turn. I forget who I played, but whoever it was just took out Killmonger no problem because even like the Unices are like a 9-1 and a 12-2. They're huge. Like they normally can take out anything. As well as of course I got the Dazer. So he only had Killmonger left. I just went ahead. Paid the yellow, became Deadpool. Um, and as I said, Killmonger can't steal that. And then just someone dazed or attacked Killmonger, and then I attacked him directly for a game, and that was pretty much it for that one.
Do you think
So ended up.
the do you think the
Mhm.
Killmonger recruit at that time was a like a mistake? Like had he held the Killmonger back to try to steal level 3 Mystique's powers, would that have mattered? Or just by declaring an attack on that turn, did that set you up where you were going to get the kill next turn regardless of what happened?
I don't remember what was in my hand, so it's hard to say. But
Sure.
I do know that I prepped for Killmonger, so I would know how to play around Killmonger if my opponents did have him. So I'm not worried about a Killmonger normally,
Well, and if he just
because
waited one
either
more turn, it sounds like you killed him on the next turn, so that one more turn never would have came anyway.
So yeah, that's the thing. Even if my opponent like either way, I have to get rid of your board to get at you directly. So normally I'll have someone that can just attack a Killmonger, and there's not much Photo can do to stop it.
So that puts you
So
at the end of the
yeah,
day at 5-2, correct?
you got it. Not the worst record.
Well, I think you probably felt at that moment you were locked in. Like, did you feel playing against Aaron that that was a win and in for you, or were you pretty comfortable that you had good enough tiebreakers earlier in the event that you were probably in good shape anyway?
Yeah, I think after Ash in my game going 4-0, no, I thought at that moment, no matter what happened, I was in. Because we had less people on day two, obviously, than day one, so there would be more 4 and 3s that made it. Um, so yeah, that moment I felt safe, even though, for example, I lost to Sel and then I lost to Ashley. Like I think we were still like at table one. So I'm like, all right, my tiebreakers, either way you look at it, are pretty high up. Even if I lost and I went 4 and 3, like my losses would have been to Marcellus, who was the 7-0, Ashley, who I think ended up 6-1,
Hmm.
um, and then Aaron. So like, I think either way I was good, but of course I want to play those out and do the best I can.
Yeah, yeah, that's not a dice you want to roll. Like, like let's get this win and guarantee we're in. Because it does look like there's what, one, two, three, four, 4-3 records that did not make it. So that's always a little
Wow,
risky. Although starting your
for
day
sure.
with so many wins in a row, yeah, you're right. You probably were pretty safe. So that
Yeah.
takes us to the end of the first day. You know you're in for Sunday. How did that? Did you spend time thinking about preparation for Sunday on Saturday? Did you go around and just enjoy Gen Con? Did you witness any car fires? Apparently, that's what happens when you win Gen Con last year.
Hmm. Uh, no, I mean, so I was surprised to see that they published the deck list. Um, I was definitely not expecting that. So for sure, when they published the deck list, I went through everyone's deck list and I formulated strategies for any one of my opponents that I went against. Um, yeah. So
Now, did you
and I
knowing that you were seed three? I'm assuming they did typical pairing of like 1 to 8, 2 to 7, and so on. So knowing you were going to have to start the day facing what it looks like Bert, did you spend time specifically prepping for that deck and then sort of trace your way through the top eight, or did you just study the whole day two set of deck lists, or what was your approach to preparation for the event or the top cut? I mean.
so since he was my first opponent, and I have a lot of respect for the man. The man's a great player. I definitely spent a good chunk of time reviewing his deck list, and essentially more than anything, everyone in my bracket. Right?
Mhm.
Because those are the people that I'm more than likely going to play. The other bracket, I'm like, well, if I get all the way to the top, if I get lucky enough to get to the top, we'll see where that takes us. But um, yeah, I spent more time on his deck list, and good thing is he didn't have any plot twists. So for the most part, I just can try to level up and attack directly. That was essentially my plan on that one, and just be very careful not to let him ramp. And then what was that? That was Friday, but I think Saturday we also had, or was it Friday itself? Yeah, Friday itself. So we didn't actually have time after the tournament. So, like I said, went 5-2, and then immediately was blood and guts.
Oh,
And I
jeez.
hadn't put a, yeah, I had not put a deck together. But I mean, I felt like this was the same thing. Like last year, it was just Incursion was Outriders. Everyone was Outriders. This year, I thought everyone was just going to be Liu Kang, right?
It almost bums me out
Literally,
how good Liu Kang is because I really like him, but everybody really likes him. So it's like, well, now I feel like I got to play somebody else. So it's like Super Awesome Games did almost too good of a job with that guy because everybody wants to play him. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off there, man.
right? No, no, you're good. You're 100% right. It's like you almost want to dislike him because he's so popular and so good.
Yeah, exactly. And the theme is so good. Anyway,
That one. So I mean, that one could have honestly been anyone's tournament. That was just like literally I played 4 rounds. All 4 of my rounds were Luke Kang dittos. First I played my friend Diego, who had a very similar build to mine, and then it's just I got lucky and drew the better plot twist than he did. Um, Game 2 I played against my teammate Patrick. Again, close. It's just the draw in that one, right? Then what is it? Round 3, Jamil, Tavon's brother.
Hmm.
Nice guy. I could not tell those two apart for the life of me. I feel like I spent all weekend was like just like which one of you is which, and I don't know
Shout
if
out
I
to the
annoy them.
plot
I hope I
twisters.
right. I hope I didn't annoy them, but I was like legit serious. I'm like I don't know which one of you is which. So okay, but I played him again. Liu Kang Ditto, and then finally Gabriel. Nice guy. Gabriel's a really nice guy. I remember I played him last year, Gen Con round 1. And so it's good to see us from going to that round 1 last year when he played Crimson Cowl and I played Doom, and we were just like 4-2 slapping each because neither one of us drew good, and we're just like this 4-2 and 2-4 just slapping each other back and forth. To now we're like, hey, we're both literally whichever one of us wins this blood and gut tournament. Like that was a cool exchange. So we just played. It was some good back and forth, but I think I just got a little bit luckier, and so I was able to pull that one out. So yeah, so then that was the blood and guts. I ended up winning the blood and guts event too.
Seems like a good Gen Con for you, dude.
Yeah, I can't complain for sure. Because you had 7 rounds for the incursion, and then uh we had 7 rounds for the incursion, and then we had 4 for the. So that was 11 matches in one day. That was mentally exhausting because we don't have a massive player pool in this game, but all the players we do have are very legit players.
So that brings you to the end of Friday. Going into
Hmm.
Saturday, were you, hey, I want to spend some time at Gen Con, see some other games, uh, catch the con crud, or were you, I got to drill down on these deck lists and like get in some test matches to make sure that my Sunday goes well? What was your headspace on Saturday?
That was going to be Saturday night. Saturday in the morning. So Upper Deck released all the Alpha Sentinel promos, and they are all gorgeous. They released the Sentinel promos, and on top of that, they had Mutant Control Act promos, the Training Grab promos, Senator Kelly promos, and I wanted them all. So
Fair.
I had to do the league. Yeah, I had to do the league, and I actually had to run through the league twice, just so I can get everything. Yeah. And then on top of that, for example, for Blood and Guts for winning Blood and Guts, they gave me one of those the big cards, which I traded it for promos. That's what I normally do because it's really difficult to go through the airport with those big cards.
Oh yeah.
So I traded that one. Yeah, I'm like, all right, let's trade for some promos. So I did that. But now I had to do all these league matches on Saturday morning. So I did that, and then Saturday around midday, like 2, 3 o'clock, was the AEW event. Um, Put together that deck, and I'm a wrestling fan, so I went with Chris Jericho. Um, we got the Fearless match, so essentially everyone was striking for double, and that was just I went all weenies for that tournament. I'm like, screw it, I don't need big guys. I'm just gonna go all weenies, and then I'm gonna play everything I can so I can make sure that my opponent cannot hide. Because apparently AEW has a lot of leap, but they have no flight. So you can fly over them, but they'll never be able to defend it.
Hmm.
So I went that one I remember round 1. I played round 1. So they broke it up into pods, and each pod had like 6 to 8 players. And our pod round 1, I had to play Vern. And essentially, I went first, and that's essentially what it was. I just kept flying my guys into him. And 5 turns, 5 wounds. That was pretty self-explanatory right there. Second round, I got a bye, and then the finals of my pod was against Marcellus. I thought I was in deep trouble because he was Daniel Bryan or Brian Danielson, which had 1 more wound, 6 wounds, and then on top of that, he got the initiative. So I'm not even sure how I played that, but I played it in a way, and somehow I was able to take the W because I was like, if he has 6 wounds, I have to be able to go first, and then I have to be able to survive a turn. But the fact that he went first and he had more wounds, I honestly don't know how to pull that one off. Um, but I won that one, so I won my pod, so that gave me a second big card, which I traded for promos. That's what I ended up doing with those big cards normally. And then in the top 4 of that, I went against John Phillip. Um, he played the main that I was thinking of playing. It was something Page. Is it Hangman Page
Oh,
or
yeah, Adam Hangman Page.
it might have been him? Yeah, I think he's like pay a green. Your opponent loses like powers for during this combat, which is really good because not only do they get a -1, but they're going to lose Fearless. So very strong character. I tried, but it's John Phillips. We all like he's a great player, and he just got the win over me. So I took a top 4 on that one. I got the table big card, which they took pictures of, which was awesome. And then, as I said, traded it away. um, and that was it. At that point, again, tired for the day, and me, Diego, and his brother, we all went out. We just went out for some dinner and decided to go back to the hotel and just go over. I went over deck list for the next day.
Okay, so that brings us to Top Cut for Gen Con. So your first matchup against Bert, you went up against him during your qualifier round. I imagine you came into this with some amount of confidence, knowing you had bested this deck once before, and now you had the complete list. Or I could also see anytime somebody has to face off against Bert, there's a certain amount of respect and fear that has to go into that. How are you feeling?
A mix of both, right? Definitely a mix of both because I straight up told him I'm like I do believe my deck had the advantage, but I also respect Bert as a player and that I know if I could easily one little mess up and I can end up throwing the whole game. So I'm like I have I know the matchup. I know exactly what is in his deck, so I know what he can and can't do. And so I had the advantage, and because I was third and he was sixth, that means I get the odd initiative. So it was definitely good my way. And yeah, there wasn't unfortunately like too much. As I said, Mystique stands at the front, everyone hides behind her, and eventually trade with his Adam Warlock. He goes face down, and then whoever he has up by around turn 6 or 7, they just get stunned by either a Eunice, a Lilith, a Boomerang, what have you, and then attack for the game, attack directly, and he can't do anything about that. That was essentially 2 games in a row.
Okay, so you come out of round one, 2-0 against Bert. Uh, that's got to feel pretty good. Like anytime you collect a W off Bert, that's a feather in your cap to some degree. Um, did this?
For sure.
How did that affect your head going forward? Were you still kind of feeling confident? Was that a confidence booster?
I mean, it definitely felt good, and the biggest thing, as I said, not only do I study, like, took a look at all the deck lists, but I also took a look at the bracket, and I knew what my hardest matchups were gonna be versus what weren't. Like the aggressive decks, Ashley and Seldos were gonna be like my hardest matchups if I had to play them. So luckily, I avoided those two. And Aaron, which I was hoping he would, he beat Ashley. Because I realized like it could be dicey for Liu Kang in the very beginning, but at the same time, a Choose Your Destiny or V levels up. I don't know if there was much Ashley could have done in that matchup um, if he drew well enough. And it looked like he did because for a while after, someone said, "Hey, you have to play Aaron next." I was like, "Great." That's again, nothing is guaranteed. A lot of great players, but it's definitely the easier of the 2 matchups for me. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's definitely easier of the two.
Sure.
Um, and then yeah, he's the only yeah. So first game, we ended up trading a few times. Like I drew a good amount of reds, and I just stunned Liu Kang 5 turns in a row few turns with the Reds and Mystique, and then eventually with just Anus came in, he just started striking him. So that was it for
Mhm.
the first game. Second game, he drew well with the TVA, turned to Quicksilver, and I just couldn't recover. I think I want to say at a certain point it was maybe him or against someone else in day one. I tried to become um, Joseph, but I couldn't draw a red. So unfortunately, if you don't draw a red, he just sits as a 6/6, and that was bad.
Yeah, that's not
Game
good
three,
enough.
yeah. Game three, also same thing. He drew TVA, and I thought for a second there that I threw the game away. Like I was like, oh crap, because on a turn two, he dropped down Killmonger, and I did not MCA it. I jitters, whatever it may be. I forgot to
Hmm.
MCA it, so I was like, no powers. It's hard for me to level up, even if I drop my own 4 drop Eunice on my turn two. And on top of that, after I dropped Eunice, I was like, all right, he flawless victoried Killmonger, and then and I'm like, all right, at least I'm going to get another swing in with my Eunice next turn. But then he dropped Kotal Khan, paid a green, put that second wound on me, and just wiped it off the board. So I don't recall too much more what happened those next few turns. I just remember like the last sequence, which his turn 4 or 5, he leveled up to level 2 Liu Kang, and he had apparently at a certain point I wiped out the Killmonger, but then he had um Kotal Khan. So it was Kotal Khan and level 2 Liu. Um, I had 3 wounds. I don't think he remembered that when I level up to level 3, I had 6. So he teamed attack with both of them, paid the yellow, put a wound on Mystique, put it 4. Um, I think I was level 2 at that point, though. I was a level 2, so I paid the red with Mystique, double stunned with Liu Kang, and then it leveled me up to a level 3, which gave me the additional wound. So I went from 3 wounds to 5 wounds, but I thankfully I was level 3 at that moment, and I had that last wound. And so all he had on his board was a Kotal Khan. And I was a level 3, and I think I had Mystique, and behind her had a Marble Girl. And then during my turn, I think I just dropped I had like 7 or 8 resources. I think I dropped like a 4 drop and a 3 drop, something like that. And it was attack Kotal or Daze him or whichever one I did, and then Mystique transform into Deadpool, attack direct for game.
Wow.
So yeah, that was nerve wracking. I honestly thought I threw that matchup away, and I was already beating myself up for it. But I try to tell myself, all right, let's stay cool. Maybe we can do some sort of comeback because this board is not big yet. Um, and yeah, was able to clutch that one out barely, but
Yeah, it doesn't get much closer than that.
right. So what was after that? So then after that was the finals of day 2 bracket, which was Osh, which it seems just like I'm destined to fight Bert in the first round of top 8 or top 16, whichever one it is. I'm destined to fight Osh in the top 4.
Hmm.
Last year at Gen Con, it was the same thing. He was Marvel Girl, and I was Doctor Doom in the top 4, and he wiped the floor with me. This year, um, it was Osh, and he had his Dark Phoenix, and I of course had Mystique, and I just knew it was going to be like one of those games that's just mentally exhaust you. Um, I was able to stave off the first turn or the first game, and was able to get in a Deadpool win, and then the second game, unfortunate for Osh, he just drew really poorly. Like, of course, he plays 1,000 locations, and I don't think he drew a location for like the first 4 or 5 turns, which is insane. So I think at that moment he just gave it up because he was just like, yeah, this isn't going anywhere. Like it was just a horrible hand for him, and that's just very unfortunate for him. Um, so that pretty much was the end of that, and then I essentially had to wait for the winner of Patrick and Mitch.
So that ends up, you guys as a team had a really good showing there. So two
Yeah,
seats at the
LGD
finals on day two, and then Patrick at the finals on day one.
for sure. And the whole tournament, props to my LGD teammates. I mean, there's three of us, and we took three of the top four spots. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you can't beat that. Like, yeah,
that's an
that's as
impressive
good of a
run.
showing I think it's right. And not to mention, since I got the win this year and Osh got the win last year, LGD now we're Gen Con champs 2 years in a row. Um, yeah, so we're doing pretty good. We're having about as best a time I think as we can right now.
So I noticed as a distant spectator that the final game ended up having to be played somewhere different. What was that the plan all along? Did you guys run out of time? What was the situation surrounding that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, top 16, a lot of good players, a lot of good decks, a lot of thinking going on. And so by the time it got to the finals, Gen Con, I think I heard closed at 4 p.m. and they were kicking people out. So we had to follow Chad to the hotel across the street, and him and Vito, I think, had to find, or him and Vito had to find some table for us to play in the hallway.
Oh, jeez.
Yep.
Uh,
And it's all kinds of craziness because I know Mitch has his kids with him and he has all his stuff. And I, of course, have like all my bags because after this, I go straight to the airport. And then we're not even allowed to hold on to our own decks. Chad had to do it, right? Because they just want to make sure that there's no funny business.
yeah, that's fair.
And so, yeah, that's totally fair, right? And it was just this big rush, like we got to go because it was already like 4 something because they already closed. And on top of that, my flight left like at 7:30, I think 7:30, 7:40. So there was pressure also like, oh crap, I hope this doesn't take too long, whether win or lose. Like I have to hit my flight.
Yeah, that's a very tough situation to be in. I imagine that is producing some form of cognitive like did you feel that pressure at the table? Like, did you feel it impacting your decisions, or were you able to kind of compartmentalize once the game got going?
I want to say a mix of both. I'm not even sure. Like that whole thing was like definitely the timing was um, on my mind, but the games were actually going pretty fast. So I think when I realized, okay, time wise, I'm actually doing pretty good. I slowed down a little bit there.
So going up against Mitch, this is another player that if you're familiar with the versus scene, you're familiar with Mitch.
Mhm.
Many appearances at the finals and many tournaments for this guy. Uh, what were you thinking as far as, I mean, I realized there were these other situations creating pressure on you, but as far as just facing off against Mitch, what was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah. Yeah. On top of everything else, like you said, Mitch is an absolutely amazing player. Um, and I know that, for example, in another few tournaments, he's like, I've never beaten him before. And I straight up told him, I'm like, I've never beaten you, so let's see how this goes. In the sense that, for example, I remember we played an online tournament. I think it was Osh's Tournaments of Champions, or no, it was a different one. I'm sorry, it was a different tournament, and I think he was my only loss. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I think I went like 4-1.
he does that
Go
to
ahead, sorry.
people. Oh, I'm just
Yeah,
saying, Mitch is good. He's beat me a lot too.
he, for sure. The man is great, and then I think it was also the midwinter. He knocked me out on the top four in midwinter. He's my first round in the top four, and then he knocked me out. So
hmm
you know, and again, great quality of players here. You got to respect them, even if you think your deck has an advantage or not. You just have to respect the player. One bad mood, boom, yeah, one bad move, and it's over.
hmm
Now that being said, as I said, I did formulate plans for everyone, including Mitch. So he only ran, I think, on the run as his only plot twist, and I still remember it because, as I said, I thought about all this out. He played 6 prowlers for the 1 drop, 2 of the 4 drop. So I was like, if I can get a Timbuba out there, he's never gonna level up. Um, Game one, I had we since it was finals, we had to roll for initiatives. I was just looking for Timbuba, and The easiest way to say it is game one and game two. Both of those games, I drew 3 Timbubas. So
Oh
I'm
my
like, well,
goodness.
yeah, I know he's he's probably not happy about Timmy. Um, but yeah, Timmy sat there. He couldn't do anything about it. He played Mantis. She couldn't double stun with anything, and so it was essentially the same thing. I honestly just started building a board behind Mystique that he couldn't get with Eunice, X23, Timbuba, Hounds, and just they were just sitting there. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm slowly attacking to level up when I can, and that was it. Game one, when I was ready to go off, I think, and Mitch, of course, is really great. So even he, like Jessica Jones, like at one moment, I'm like, okay, I know I can't go off this turn because I don't have enough attacks with Jessica sitting there. So let me plan this for the next turn, get some wounds on her, and then the next turn, hopefully, doesn't play anything crazy, and I should just be able to go through the board. So I did that. Let Lilith do her thing, and then the next turn afterwards, just he really didn't have anything to play. Next turn afterwards, I played whatever else I had in my hand, and then everyone I just needed a few minutes to calculate all the attacks, and then everyone went in and then attacked him directly. And I knew obviously if I attack directly, it's game. He has no plot twist, nothing that he can really do to stop it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So game two, he went, and at one moment I think game one he attacked into me. He tried an attack, and that's the fun of the Mystique deck. You have to try to stop the hate, but you can't always stop the hate because when you try it, dramatic into Marvel Roll, and that helped me level up game one. And game two, he even said himself right after the game, I think he messed up at one moment. He put um, Mantis in the back, and if he had actually just run Mantis into me, he might have been able to drop. He would have been able to drop Dark Phoenix against me. And that probably would have messed the game up. I don't know. I don't think I could have made a comeback at that point, but who knows? Um, like they were outs. Like if he calls keywords, I have the superpowers, and I can even bring in Joseph. Like it's not my first time dealing with Dark Phoenix. I just know it's bad. But depending on what my opponent calls, I still have outs.
Hmm.
Um, but the second game, he forgot about that, and I think maybe he was just a little bit worried. Like the first game, he tried an attack and dramatic in a Marvel Girl. Um, I think that caught a lot of people off guard this tournament, and
Sure.
so he put that. Yeah, he put her in the back, and then again, I was just able to get my board big, hide everyone behind Mystique, and then with the Timbuba, he couldn't even play Iceman to freeze me. So everyone went in, and that was all she wrote. Deadpool.
Well, congratulations, champ.
Thanks.
Yeah, I can
Yeah, that was
definitely.
awesome.
I see what you're saying there about somebody declares an attack, they get horribly punished with this dramatic Marvel Girl play, and then next game you're like traumatized by it, like you're a little shell shocked and afraid to attack. That is the kind of thing that we see play out in these like best of threes. I almost wish we had best of threes, and now I realize it's unrealistic, especially given how long a lot of these days are. But those types of moments we don't see a lot of in our events because so many of them are best of one. So that's a really cool observation to see how that. I mean, no disrespect to Mitch, of course, but that's certainly a thing I think we can all empathize with a little bit. Like you get your hand burned, and then it's like the next attack. Do I really want to declare this? I don't know what you're a little gun shy.
And that's part of, as I mentioned, why I picked Mystique. Like number one, I thought the new cards really benefited her, but number two, I don't think people had enough experience. People, I'm sure, tested against all the usuals, like I said, Invisible Woman. So people have plans for these decks, but they don't necessarily have plans against Mystique. And then on top of that, my Mystique is very different. Like no people, at least I didn't think they play, for example, Eunice. Mine played 8 Eunices. People always would do the shock to the systems, and for example, Catfight. Catfight is a great card, and there's no reason not to play that. But my deck just didn't. So it was a very different deck. The dramatic was very, very good because not only were you not safe attacking Mystique, but you were not a safe attacking anybody, literally attacking anybody. Any of my hate cards, you try to attack them, you're going to stun and you're going to level up Mystique. So yeah, it was really hard for people to work around that.
Do you have any predictions about what cards are going to get destroyed because of this event?
I'm pretty sure whoever wins an incursion event automatically gets that main um, bans.
Yeah.
I'm actually very proud of getting Mystique. I'm like, because it was the only one who played her, and she is banned. Like
Do you
I'm
think
very
do you
proud
think
of
they'll
that.
take your Deadpool out of there as well? It seems like he was pretty integral to that. Do you think they're going to hit both those cards, Timbuba, anything else, or just the MC?
I think it's just the MC. Without the MC, he becomes a lot less efficient. And then I think there's a lot of other cards. Like I hope personally hope the machine goes. That thing is horrible. Maximus needs to go. That thing is horrible. I would love to see Dark Phoenix go. That she is horrible. Um, yeah, those are the ones I want to see go. Um, I don't know if Ghost Spider is going to go. I don't know if any of the loyalty cards are going to go because those did actually appear in big numbers in the top eight. So, like maybe Stand Together goes, or as I said, Ghost Spider herself goes. Maybe even Prowler because of Ghost Spider. There was a lot of Prowlers in the top eight. Um, Monarch would be a good one as well. Like these are the cards that have to go to give other decks out there a chance. These cards got to go.
Which I think is a really good way of looking at it. So often, and I don't want to get on the hobby horse of this argument with anybody, so I'm going to be very economical in my comments here, but I think so often people look at the idea of banning cards as taking something away from you. But I think you're framing there of we're banning these cards, we're destroying these cards so that we get to play with all these other cards that have just been sitting in the binder. I think that's exactly the right perspective.
For sure. No, I think it's great in that. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of Incursion, but now I am. It's every tournament is going to be completely different, and new things are always going to show up. I love it.
Yeah, I wish they would have come up with this tournament format like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, because now it'd be this totally unique thing. It's still kind of like multiverse, the full binder, or like the community format modern. It's still similar in terms of its overall impact on the card pool, but I'm very much looking forward to where Incursion goes over the coming years.
You and me both, for sure.
Well, hey, that brings me to the end of the outline that I prepared. So, did you have any other thoughts or comments or things I didn't ask specifically about with regard to Gen Con, the tournament, the decks, the players, anything about the event?
No, not the biggest thing is just shout outs, right?
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Number
So
one.
if there's nothing else, definitely plug, promote, shout out, whatever you like. The floor is yours. Sorry, I stepped on you a little there, man.
No, you're good. Shout outs number one, my brother. He plays the game passively for fun, but he's a very smart guy. He would join me in stuff like Gen Con, but he's got the family life, and let's be honest, going to Gen Con's expensive. Hotel, getting a Gen Con badge, even the tournaments cost money now. Like it's expensive, right? Even getting all the cards for versus, keeping up with all the sets, it gets expensive. But so he just plays passively. I'm trying to convince him to see if one day he'll go to a tournament with me, but we'll see. But shout outs number one to him because he helped me build Mystique. He helped me put it together. He helped me think of how to work against different decks. And since him and I think a lot alike, I think that was a huge thing. So definitely no, I could not have done it without him. He's number one. Number two is obviously my teammates of good old Let's Get Dangerous, Ash and Pat, both of those guys very good guys, very smart guys. They have great insights for any time that we discussed, and I like even show them the Mystique deck. I'm glad they liked it. They helped me strategize as well, and it's great that I had these two guys as playtesting partners as well. Besides my brother, because these are two again very smart guys to play against. Like I know I'm getting quality playtesting when I go against them. So definitely shout out to those guys and shout outs to them again. LGD, three of the top four placements, right? Three of the four top placements at Gen Con. So massive shout out. I'm really proud of those guys for getting as far as they did. Um, we all could win it. That would have been awesome, but that's just the way, unfortunately, it goes. Uh, yeah, and then 2 years running LGD. Last year we took Gen Con. This year we took Gen Con, and we're going to try to make it a tradition. Hopefully next year we can take it as well. Shout outs to my friend Diego and his brother. It was great seeing those guys. And like I said, just like my brother, I know Diego has a family now. He's got a baby girl, and I know his brother also has a family. So it gets harder to play with people, right? People's got responsibilities. We all got adults, but it's always great to see those guys. It was a fun trip being able to come up with them, hang out with them for a few nights, and then head on, of course, back. And then last but not least, shout out to everyone else. Everyone I played, everyone I talked to. It really is just a freaking great community. Whether it's, members of LGD, the Big Three, Team Apex, No Team people, just some of the casual people. There's just so many fun people. And like I said, like so many good people to talk to. There ain't no one evil. There's just good people. It's very good competitive people, and I don't know, you just can't ask for a better community, I think. So shout outs to everyone. And then I guess the final shout out goes to all the judges, um, Chad, D Rob, uh, Patrick, Veets, like, and anyone else I'm forgetting. Like, shout outs to all of them for putting on this event. Like, it gets hectic, right? With so many players, so many events, keeping up with everything, having to double check the rules. Because, of course, none of us, the players, we make it all complicated with the rules, right? We're like, well, if this works this way, then So shout outs to those guys, and then even having to get us a hotel for the finals. I mean, I know those guys must have been exhausted. They put in a lot of good work themselves. So definitely shout out to them as well. I think that covers anyone. If I did miss anyone, I do apologize.
All right. Well, hey, as always, I appreciate when people take time out of their day to come on the show. So thank you for being so generous with sharing your story with me and the audience here. Um, we'll have to have you back next year once you guys hit the three-peat, of course.
Yeah, and for anyone who's going to Ohio, I'll see you guys there next month. I look forward to that.
All right, great. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, and I think we'll wrap things up here. So until next time, go win some games.